Thanks so much for having me. Happy to be here. Happy to rip up that mock draft at least 8 more times before Thursday and the countdown goes on the clock. So here we go, right?
And not only that, I feel like everyone's going to be ripping up their mock draft when it's all said and done because no one seems that confident in their draft picks. How confident are you in your mock draft?
Oh, this is the worst year I can remember, honestly, because it starts at number 1, right? I think that's the hardest thing. For so long, I was set on Aiden Hutchinson going first overall in this draft. And, for the longest time, I kind of put aside the Trayvon Walker rumors. And now you have to buy in a little bit. So I think the unpredictable nature of the number 1 overall pick kind of sets everything else in line. The good thing is it's going to be some kind of combination at 1 and 2, whether it's Walker first and Hutch second or reversed. And then after that is where it gets really fun.
The draft's in Vegas this year, which gives it, of course, an extra layer of excitement. But if you were given an all-access pass to any team's draft room this year, whose would it be?
It's a great question, and I think it has to be one of the 2 New York teams, right? Just because it's unprecedented to see a team pick twice in the top, 2 teams pick twice in the top 10, and 2 teams that really got to get it right. And I know that's kind of cliche to say. You have the Giants starting with a new regime and Joe Shane. I think they'll be a little bit more flexible in terms of willing to move one of the 2 picks to get later capital for 2023 if that opportunity presents itself. And then a New York Jets football team that has to start winning games under Joe Douglas. He's done a nice job making trades. He's done a nice job acquiring the picks. But none of that matters if you're constantly losing on the field. So they know how much 4 and 10 means to them. There's a lot of different combinations that both of those teams can go. So I would love to see the arguments between the offensive staff, the defensive staff, and the front office evaluators in both those war rooms right now.
Oh, Connor,
just to piggyback,
picked a bone here with Yannis. Good luck. We got a Giants fan on our hands.
Yeah, we do. But first, I definitely want to focus on the Jets because they've had 4 top 10 picks in 2 years. Zach Wilson, Barrett Tucker. 4 picks in the top 40 this year. Are they running out of excuses, the Jets? I mean, should they be sent down like they do in soccer in Europe?
I mean, they got to get it done, right? And this is the relegation. Is that what they call it? I believe it's
relegation.
Tough,
yeah,
Ted Lasso term.
That's how most of us know it, right? Man, it's crazy, right? I mean, I think the reason why they're selling themselves on some hope is that Robert Saleh is still new there, but on Joe Douglas's terms. The first draft does not look good. The second draft, it's early returns, but that one does look good, and it's all going to matter what happens with Zach Wilson. So every other pick that it looks like a hit, it's still going to focus on the quarterback. I mean, you're right. You got to get this right, and it's not just 4 and 10. It's 35 and 38. Those don't need to be developmental players. Those need to be 2 starters, whether they get better at safety, linebacker, wherever it may be. They need to upgrade at starter-level positions, not depth pieces. So they need to hit on not just day 1, but on day 2 as well.
And with the Giants, I mean, I'm hearing they want an offensive tackle at 5, but maybe trade back at 10. They need more assets. They're in salary cap hell, the worst in the league. Yes. What are you predicting they do? Maybe not with that first pick, but that second.
Yeah, I feel like this is, jinxing myself by saying this, but I feel like they're actually one of the more easier teams to figure out in terms of at least the position groups they want to go. At 5, it's going to be the best offensive lineman available. Mm-hmm. Now, whether Ike Ekwonu is gone, Evan Neal is gone, then it'll be Charles Cross. I think one of the 2 are there. I don't think Ike will be there. I don't think he makes it past the Jets at 4, maybe the Texans at 3. I think the Giants would love to have Evan Neal from Alabama at 5. And then once again, that consolation prize being Charles Cross, that is not a bad consolation prize. So they're kind of zoned in on getting an offensive lineman who will play on the right side. Andrew Thomas will stay on the left side. Then you look at that other pick, and you're absolutely right. They're going to answer the phones. They're going to look at if anyone wants to come up, jump Atlanta for the first wide receiver to come off the board. Maybe we have the shock of the draft and a quarterback sneaks in that top 10. We'll see about that. But if they can't get out of that pick or they don't like the offers on the table, I think they're looking at the cornerbacks. Something on defense, at least. Sauce Gardner at corner. I think Derek Stingley's a little bit more of a long shot. Jermaine Johnson, the pass rusher from Florida State, that would be his range at well. Maybe a Kayvon Thibodeau slide begins and the Giants are willing to end that slide. But Sauce Gardner would be the top player I would project in that spot. He's a scheme fit with Wink Martindale, and he's a top 10 overall player in this draft.
All right. So you're saying the Giants are going to do good. I mean, I appreciate that.
Is that all you heard?
They're going to have a win. That's all I hear. I hear what I want to hear when it comes to the Giants. That's just how it goes. Every year it starts off optimistic. Me and my wife, we put on all our Giants attire, and then we burn it halfway through the year. So It's what we do
every
every
year.
year.
Year's pretty good. I mean, here for me, I grew up in a Jets household, and we don't usually make it halfway through the year. So take that one and run with it.
Yeah, okay, well, you're right. The only people who I feel worse for are Jets fans. So, I mean, it's been bad, New York. The Giants have won recently, so, I feel worse for you. That's rough being a Jets fan. That's tough.
Yeah, New York football is in a special place right now, and I know the Bills are
Special's the word.
It's just not New York football to us, down in the New York City area. They're in their own universe. Nothing against Buffalo, but they don't count as New York football being successful.
No, they're Canadian. I consider them Canadian.
Yeah, I didn't know how that worked. I'm a Midwesterner. I didn't know how you New York people decipher your teams.
It's very complicated.
Complicated.
I mean, the Jets and Giants play in New Jersey, so that's the Buffalo fans' rebuttal to them being not a New York team. The bottom line is nothing. It hasn't been good for the Jets and Giants recently. It's a credit to the Bills fans. It's been very, very good for them.
Yeah, it's true. Let's talk quarterbacks. I'm sorry. Is Kenny Pickett the safe play if you were drafting a quarterback? Is he the most NFL ready?
Yeah, I mean, the problem is how far does that get you, right, Giannis? When you look at it, it's just a matter of, is he on the tier of last year's guys, Lawrence, Wilson, Fields, Lance, and even Mac Jones? He's not even there, right? So it's a matter of, you could draft him, you could play him now. He's an older prospect. I believe he'll be a 24-year-old rookie. He was at Pitt for a long time, and to his credit, he figured out. I just see the ceiling with Kenny Pickett. Everything works out. You love everything around him. You love what he's done and come in and thrive and understand the offense. As Derek Carr, who's fine. There's nothing wrong with Derek Carr. But how many times do you hear a guy get drafted as the first quarterback off the board in the draft, and everybody says the end of the spectrum that everybody's celebrating at is Derek Carr? They usually like to throw comps of Rodgers, Mahomes, crazy things like that. So he's a fine player. He's not your traditional first-round quarterback, but he is the high floor of the quarterback class this year.
Yeah, but a lot of people still like Malik Willis to go before him. He's got a cannon. He's a dual threat. He might have more upside, may not be as ready. How do you think his skills translate to the NFL, or is he kind of a project?
The traits are incredible. He's got a big arm. He's got a thick build that he can take on hits when he wants to be a runner. He's got really good vision as a runner. It's very underrated. He can make every throw. We all know that. I think, and this is the case for all these guys. It's not just Malik Willis. It's Desmond Ridder. It's Sam Howell. It's Matt Corral elevated. They need to start throwing with anticipation. They need to get comfortable working through progressions over and over again, not just a play here, a play there. And Malik Willis needs seasoning. He needs to marinate a little bit. And a lot of these guys do. But Malik is the home run swing in this class, right? If you're getting up to bat, and home run swings are what keep jobs. Joe Burrow obviously was the number one overall pick, but the guys you see in the playoffs are Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, Patrick Mahomes. These are top-tier premium quarterbacks. Those are the guys that are going to continuously be there. Lamar Jackson is going to be back there, an MVP in previous years. So when you look at it in that regard, Malik Willis needs time, but at least the end of the development, the highest point for him is a premium starter.
How far back does your draft prep go? Do you have a personal database, notes on these guys going back years? I mean, when do you start watching them from preschool? I mean, how do you do it?
Yeah, so I start the end of May every single year, like an absolute sicko. I have a Excel sheet in front of me that after the declarations and everything is cut to 427 players, I ranked about 310. So you start at the end of May. You got to have a summer. You have to have a summer at some point. I think my family doesn't see me enough as it is. So you try to get 50 to 100 done over the summer. And those are the premium guys. Those are maybe the top seniors that you know are in the draft, the juniors that are going to declare barring an injury or a meltdown kind of season. So if you can go into the fall, give yourself 3 months to go through 50 to 100 players. You have a good baseline. You obviously go through it throughout the entire season. December is full throttle. December is where you're trying to get this thing up to obviously 300 players ranked all the way throughout the spring. And that's the end result. It is almost a year round. I would say 11 months comfortably.
Giannis, you did hear him say before we started recording that he has a girlfriend. I'm not so sure now that I've heard your schedule. Are you sure?
We'll see after the draft.
Does she exist?
We'll see after the draft. This is the third draft she's been through with me. Ooh. So we're at the point where it's we know what this is. It's absolute mayhem, and then May I'm a human again for a couple weeks.
Yeah.
Right?
Between your Mets obsession and the draft, you're a busy man, my man.
Yeah. Keep him busy. I'd go crazy if I didn't. It's slow. Some are slow. I'll admit that. Some are slow. Cool. That's the good life of being an NFL draft analyst full time.
Right.
Did you draft her first round, second round? Your girlfriend? What did her prep look like?
Number 1 overall pick is the safest answer you can get. If you give anything else than that, you're in deep trouble here. Okay.
Right.
I like that.
It's not a Kenny Pickett high floor. It's not a Malik Willis long-term traits. This is the blue chip prospect, generational, the whole nine.
I'm picturing your Valentine's card saying that too. This is getting very happy. This is nice.
Yeah, she's at work today. I'm working from home. She won't know about this podcast. So. Maybe she will.
Speaking of number 1 overall pick, no one knows who the Jags are taking. Their GM, Trent Baalke, said this week that they're down to 4 players. Now, what I hear when I hear him make that public comment is that they're trying to lure someone to trade up, that they're not married to anyone at that top spot. But I'm also hearing that not a lot of teams are looking to move up. What are you reading between the lines from Jacksonville?
They're going to have to make a choice, and I really do believe they're divided, and it's... almost unheard of, right? I mean, how many times do you get to 72 hours before the draft and you look at it and you go, wow, we don't know who we're going to take. And maybe they do internally, but a lot of the things I hear is that it's truly torn. You have a GM that's infatuated with a player like Trayvon Walker that is all projection. The college production was not the typical makeup of, forget a number 1 overall pick, a top 5, top 10 pick. Then you have an owner that understandably is reading everything and everybody's saying, take Aiden Hutchinson. It's the safest thing on the board. And then he's probably sitting there going, why aren't we taking Aiden Hutchinson? And then you have a Super Bowl winning offensive coach that watched the film from last year and goes, this offense is horrific. We need maybe a tackle or something like that. So I really think they're divided. I don't usually buy into things like that this close to the draft, but I think they're divided. At the end of the day, the GM is the one with the roster control, which is why Trayvon Walker is the big-time favorite to go number 1 overall right now.
How about the Lions at number 2? Last week we had Mike Renner on. He told us he thinks they're taking a quarterback, Malik Williams from Liberty. Obviously, his level of competition, it's hard to judge. What do you think about Malik Willis? How do you think his game will translate in the NFL? And you think that the Lions are going to take him?
I think it's going to take some time, right? He really does need that seasoning. And I think when it's all said and done in the right situation, if he goes to a Pittsburgh Steelers and sits behind Trubisky, they got weapons, they got Najee Harris, that's a situation where he can succeed. Now, I don't think he goes number 2 overall to the Lions. I think the Lions are sitting there and essentially playing the game of Trayvon Walker goes number 1. We will sprint in the Aiden Hutchinson card. I think they've felt that way going back all the way to November or December, guys. Now, if Aiden Hutchinson goes number 1, I think they'll gladly take a Trayvon Walker level player and just say, we need to build the defense. I think what a lot of people don't realize is, and people don't have to agree with this, maybe I don't, they do like Jared Goff. They're not scrambling at quarterback. Whether that's right or whether that's wrong, they're paying him a lot of money, at least for this year. This is not a good quarterback class. Taking one at number 2 is going to be a reach no matter how you slice it for what a guy is now or for what he could be. And there's no job security issues there. They're on 5-year deals. They're in year number 2. They could be bad again this year, and they're still going to get to draft next year in a much better quarterback class. So I don't think they take Malik Willis. I think they're going to take a defensive, trenches kind of player to build on their foundation, and they'll look to move on from Goff maybe after this season.
Now, that was a pretty hot take from Mike Renner last week. So I've got to ask you, what is some wild prediction, some hot take you have for this draft?
Wow. Well, I don't know if this is even a hot take anymore. I think the run on wide receivers, I think we're going to have 5 go between about picks 8 through 15, which is an unheard of run on wide receivers. That's just essentially wide receiver after wide receiver. You have Atlanta at 8. I think the Eagles would like to come up from 15 if they can. That's always going to be a little difficult. The Jets at 10 are looking at wide receiver. Washington at 11 is looking at wide receiver. You just go down this board. These teams, the Texans at 13, and then it goes back to even the Saints at 16, and they have 2 first-round picks now, so they're looking at wide receiver. So I think that's one that people keep comfortably thinking one will be there for Green Bay at 22, or one will be there, at 28 or 29 for the Chiefs. If you want one, you better be in the top 15, because I think the run is going to get absolutely crazy. And then the last one is, I think Trevor Penning is going a lot earlier than wherever people have him right now, which is crazy. An FCS tackle, a little bit older of a prospect, a great athlete, but another guy that needs some development. I think the demand for offensive tackles is so high that we're going to see three, and the guys I talked about earlier, Ekwonu, Cross, Neal, they're going to go in the top 7 picks of this draft, and that's going to push Penning up potentially into the top 16 of this draft.
I've got to ask, speaking of wide receiver, and this is kind of not a wide receiver, what does he call himself? A running receiver, a wide back, Deebo Samuel. There's a lot of news, and we are recording this Tuesday morning. Something may be wrapped up by Thursday of him wanting out of San Fran. But John Lynch says he doesn't imagine trading Deebo Samuel. Do you think this week we will see some action? We saw the video of him at the club saying he doesn't want to stay.
It's great.
What would be a good fit for Deebo Samuel?
Well, when it comes down to it, there are really 3 teams I think that you see in play, maybe 4. It starts with the Jets because they have the most draft capital out of everyone in the money. It's so, Olivia, it's so hard this time of year to move a guy that is getting $25 million a year because everybody spent their money already. The spending spree is gone. Nobody has cap space left. There's only a handful of teams that do. Then that team has to have the draft capital to convince the Niners to move him. So when these things come up so late in the offseason, it's not good for anybody, to be completely honest with you. So that's why the Jets are at the forefront of that. They tried to trade for Tyreek Hill, and we're going to pay him $25 million a year. It didn't work. So they're obviously all over the wide receiver market. Once again, the Eagles are looking at wide receivers. We know the Packers need a wide receiver, although the Packers didn't pay Devontae Adams. So are they going to go trade for Deebo Samuel? And are the Niners going to keep Deebo Samuel in the NFC? That seems kind of crazy to me as well, if they even move him. But to answer your question on the flip side, why there could be action this week, I mean, the Niners got to make a decision. If he's dug in, and you need to find out for absolutely for certain, if he's dug in that he's never coming back to play for your franchise, don't you need draft assets right now to help Trey Lance for next year, who's going to essentially be playing his rookie season, his first year as a full-time starter? If you trade him over the summer because he's not coming back, you get picks for 2023. Those don't help your 2022 season. This is a win-now football team under Kyle Shanahan. So I wouldn't be surprised if these next 48 hours get a little crazy.
What about Baker Mayfield? I know the Browns are going to have a hard time trading him, right, because of the money. Are they basically going to hardball someone into forcing them to give away draft picks? I mean, what's the situation? Where is he headed? How's that going to turn out?
I think the only way the Browns can unload that money is if they attach a draft pick with him, which is the last time I think we saw this was a Brock Osweiler situation a very long time ago. It's basically the contract is so bad and the player is not in demand because of that money that the team acquiring him really just wants the pick that comes with him. They'll eat the money for a year on the roster, maybe give him a shot to play. You look at teams that are kind of in flux at quarterback, teams that are in a situation that he's not coming in to be the guy, but he's also not coming in to make things complicated around the certain starter, right? So Seattle, they don't have a defined answer at quarterback. Carolina at the moment, although are you really going to pay Sam Darnold and Baker Mayfield to combine almost $40 million to be your quarterbacks? That's insanity. Absolute insanity. Although it's the one we hear all the time. Honestly, the hard truth is with Baker Mayfield right now, he is not an in-demand asset for the NFL, and that might cost the Browns to be able to unload his money.
So does he just maybe end up staying on the Browns? They can't move him?
There's a chance, but I don't think. I think both sides would say stay home. I just imagine Baker Mayfield and Deshaun Watson in the same training camp in Cleveland. It would be mass chaos. It would be a circus like we've never seen before in an NFL training camp.
Right.
I may sound naive here or like I'm still holding out hope, but I have a hard time believing Baker Mayfield doesn't have a starting job on one of the 32 teams. And like you mentioned, Seattle, wouldn't you take a Baker Mayfield over Drew Lock? I know Drew Lock has upside. We've seen him play great in Denver, but I still feel like Baker's the star. And I would like to think that he would have the smarts to reinvent himself wherever he goes next. Don't you think there's some truth to that?
I do, and it kind of goes back to our Deebo conversation, right? When you get this late in the offseason, how your market just gets devoured. And it's, we could say what we want about Baker Mayfield, what he says on Twitter, Instagram, or anything like that. It's not right how this has been handled, because if they knew they were always looking to upgrade from the absolute beginning of the offseason, I think the Washington Commanders would have taken Baker Mayfield over Carson Wentz a million times over. I think there's teams that were looking for a solution at quarterback, even if it's a stopgap option, a bridge for a year or two. They'd rather roll the dice on Baker Mayfield. They went out and got guys that cost a lot of money. They gave up draft picks. They made moves already where it was too late. And now I do agree with you, Olivia. I think Seattle, I mean, how do you even sell that Drew Lock's going to be the starting quarterback there? That's a scenario where it does make sense for Baker Mayfield. And maybe the teams know, like a Seattle, knows that nobody else is really active for him. The longer you wait, the cheaper the price gets. Or like I said, maybe you can get a draft pick back. But yeah, I'm with you. When Baker Mayfield's healthy, and he was not last year, he is one of the best 32 quarterbacks in the NFL. I think that's a pretty easy answer.
Back to Malik Willis for a second. Peter King doesn't even have him going in the first round. Is that crazy? I mean, he's a dual threat. The Liberty level of competition is the only question. What's your view on that take?
I'd be surprised. I think the Steelers not only, take him at 20, I think they explore options to make sure they get him earlier if they have to. They just don't want to give up a lot to get him. Nobody wants to give up a lot to go up. I would be very surprised. Malik Willis on day 2 to me is a situation that has not been in my head since I left the Senior Bowl in January after he had a great week there and hearing all the teams how much they loved sitting down talking to him. So that would be a big surprise to me, just because you have a lot of teams that can take a guy, sit him for a year. I mean, I don't even think it's completely out of line that if he made it all the way to the end of the round, why would Tennessee not think about sitting him behind Ryan Tannehill for 2 years or something along the lines of that? There's just a lot there where there's a lot of homes for Malik Willis if he slides. Don't see him getting past the 20th pick.
Okay, we asked Mike this last week. We talked a little bit about it, of the crazy investigation that scouts have to do to look into these players to make sure they're getting a clean-cut guy. As we know, that doesn't always pan out. But what's the craziest story you've heard of a question asked in draft interviews or some kind of deep dive into an individual?
I think the most ridiculous one that's been overused to the point of just being absurd is when they ask you if you're a cat or dog, because everybody, it's one of those things where everybody thinks the right answer is dog for obvious reasons. And then sometimes they ask favorite color, and I don't think they do it for a reason. I think they do it to get the prospect to think and see how he reacts and if he just answers the question. So draft interviews are absurd. They are not made for public consumption, I think, at this point, and that's why you don't see much of them ever shot by teams, aired by teams. When they're leaked by teams, they get more and more ridiculous. It's gotten better, I would say, since I started doing this. But it's mostly just mind games. It really is. At the end of the day, there's a lot of teams that'll sit down and just want to know about you, how you work. Sometimes they want to talk to you, not about you. They want to talk to you about your teammates because they're going to find out the truth from the guy you played with. Rather, you could sit in there and lie. So it's either mind games or it's just background work on somebody else. Or it could be trick questions as well. So it's kind of ridiculous. And now it's in person again. Let's not forget, it used to be on FaceTime during the pandemic where it was almost useless for teams.
Right.
Is there anybody out there, is there any underdog who you got your eye on who's just going to make a splash that nobody's talking about, who's going to get drafted and just surprise everyone?
Or
I mean, if we want to go...
Under cat
or dog. Yeah, that's right. That's a good one. If we want to go deep cut here, I mean, we're talking player 150 on the board. Velus Jones from Tennessee, an explosive returner, an explosive receiver. He tested really, really well. There's always that one guy, and a lot of it's, the fantasy community hyping him up, training camp, preseason. There's always that one guy that has to sit there first 2 days of the draft. His name doesn't get called. Everybody goes home from the draft party. You're on the couch by yourself with the cell phone and the agent. And I think Velus Jones is someone that doesn't go in the top 100 picks of this draft and really sticks on the back end of a roster, and by year 2 can be a legitimate playmaker in this league. So he's somebody that I would gladly stick my name on and say this guy is athletic. Tennessee's quarterback situation and passing offense was not great. That held him back. And once again, he's just been underutilized, and I think he'll exceed his draft expectations.
Nice call.
Giannis, if you were a draft prospect, would you want to be in person at the draft, or would you want to be home in case your night goes horribly wrong?
No, I want to be there. I want to be there in person. I want to be there in person.
Now, I've been to Vegas with Giannis, and he'd get one of those big, tall daiquiris, and he'd be sitting there, and there might be a problem, but I think you'd have a good night either way.
Yeah, either way, I'm drinking, so that's what it is. It's just, am I drinking because I'm happy or I'm drinking because I'm sad, but I'm drinking either way.
Yeah, it's an experience of how do you pass it up, right? At one time for work, I was in Vegas for 8 days, and by day 5, you're just sitting in the sports book watching baseball. Like, how much longer can I actually survive in this place? For the draft prospects, for most of them, hopefully it's just one night.
At that point, too, the bartenders probably don't believe that you're there for work anymore either.
No, not at all.
I've been there too.
Yeah, no, I think you're lying.
Well, you're a Mets and Jets fan, so there's probably a lot of bartenders that know you by a first name basis, right?
Yeah, I would say that. I mean, in my neighborhood joint here, it's, for Jets games, I don't even stomach going out. That's just not off the table. That doesn't happen anymore. For the New York Mets, absolutely. It's, how many rounds can you go through? They usually blow it at the bullpen as well, so you sit through extra innings. It could be a costly tab.
God. Oh, man. That was a lot of fun, Connor. You gave us a lot of good insight and laughs. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me. It was great. I hope you guys enjoy the draft.
You can follow Connor Rogers on Twitter @ConnorJRogers. Enjoy the NFL draft, and thanks again for being here.